Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the story of Bill Gates. We're using an extensive interview with him as our source, looking at, everything from the start, Microsoft's rise, the big shift to philanthropy, and his thoughts on what's next.
Right. And our mission here is to pull up the quick learn about innovation, about leadership. How powerful can one single idea be? And how does a life focused on impact, keep evolving? There are definitely some aha moments in here about spotting opportunities and really making a difference.
Exactly. And the big question we're tackling is, how did one idea, which seems kind of simple now, not just shake up an industry, but fundamentally change how, billions of us live and work?
Okay, let's unpack this. So that foundational one idea for Bill Gates was essentially this. Computers shouldn't just be for governments or big companies. They could be tools for everyone. And here's where it gets really interesting. This wasn't some perfectly formed vision from day one, right? It's more of a simple, but deeply disruptive thought. Oh, absolutely. It's hard to even picture now, but back in the early 70s, computers were these massive, incredibly expensive machines. You needed whole teams just to run them. So the idea of a personal computer was completely counterintuitive, almost absurd to the way people thought about computing then. It definitely wasn't a detailed master plan, more like a gut feeling born out of pure fascination, really.
And Paul Allen was key to that initial spark, wasn't he? Finding that Altair 8800 in Popular Electronics. He apparently ran to Gates saying, "This is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for." You can almost feel that urgency.
You really can. And that realization, that specific moment, was the catalyst for Microsoft. Or Microsoft, as it was first called. The whole company was built on this really radical promise, empowering people through software. They weren't trying to build the machines themselves. Their insight was realizing the gap was the software, the code that could make these complex machines usable by, anyone, and focusing on software, not hardware, right from the start. That was absolutely crucial for scaling later on. It set a template, really.
It's wild to think about now, isn't it, with smartphones everywhere. But back then, people genuinely questioned it. Why would an ordinary person need a computer? What gave Bill and Paul that confidence when everyone else was so skeptical?
Well, initially it wasn't about market research or profit projections. It was this deep curiosity, an obsession almost with programming. They just loved making the machines do things. That feeling of empowerment was, addictive for them. But those early days were tough. Very little money, borrowing computer time, scraping by, and then the big one, software piracy. People just copying their work.
Right. Which brings us to that open letter to hobbyists. That was a pretty bold move at the time, maybe even controversial. He basically said, look, software takes effort. It should be paid for. Why was that letter so important for the industry?
It was foundational. He was essentially drawing a line in the sand in this very young, very informal hobbyist culture where sharing software freely was the norm. His argument, though it got pushback, established the idea of software as intellectual property with commercial value. Without that basic economic model, the idea that you could build a business selling software, the huge industry we have today, it might have looked very different. It really laid the economic groundwork.
So you had this intense passion keeping them going day to day, but also this bigger long-term vision of a computer for everyone, keeping them pointed in the right direction.
Exactly. Passion for the short term, vision for the long haul. And, timing was critical too. They weren't too early. They weren't too late. They hit that sweet spot.
As Gates himself said later, the real risk wasn't trying and failing. The real risk was not trying at all. Makes sense. Okay, let's jump forward a bit. Microsoft didn't just survive, it exploded. The tech scene in the late 70s, early 80s, it sounds like chaos. IBM, Apple, Atari, Commodore, DEC, everyone fighting for a piece of the personal computer pie. A real Wild West situation.
It absolutely was a very fragmented, very competitive market. And then came the moment that really changed everything. The IBM deal. IBM, the giant, decided to get into PCs, and they needed an operating system fast. So they went to, surprisingly, little Microsoft. Microsoft then quickly bought an existing system called QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, actually, and adapted it into MS-DOS.
Okay, but let's focus on the deal itself, because the critical part, the absolute game changer, was that Microsoft licensed MS-DOS to IBM. They didn't sell it outright. Why was that specific decision, licensing, not selling, so incredibly transformative?
Oh, it was pure strategic brilliance. It was all about scale and control. By licensing MS-DOS, they didn't just get paid once by IBM. They kept the rights to license it to other hardware makers too. And suddenly all these IBM PC clones started appearing. And guess what? They all needed MS-DOS. Microsoft effectively became the standard, the essential ingredient for the entire PC industry without having to build any hardware themselves. It was a platform play before people really talked about platform plays.
And building on that foundation came Windows. This was about making computers usable for, well, millions more people, right? Moving away from typing commands.
Exactly. Windows was inspired by the graphical interfaces coming out of Xerox PARC and, of course, Apple's Macintosh. The goal was to make it visual, intuitive. Icons, folders, a mouse. It was about lowering the barrier to entry. You didn't need to be a techie anymore. It really was the democratization of computing, like giving people car keys without making them learn mechanics first. It just opened the floodgates.
But that put them head-to-head with Apple, and specifically Steve Jobs. Their approaches were so different. Apple controlling everything, Microsoft wanting to be everywhere.
Very different philosophies. Apple was about that seamless, elegant, design-first experience, hardware and software tightly integrated. Microsoft's strategy was ubiquity, get MS-DOS and Windows onto as many machines as possible, regardless of who made them. It led to intense rivalry, but also, spurred innovation on both sides.
Yeah, I remember that famous or infamous moment when Gates appeared on screen at an Apple event.
Right. To announce Microsoft was investing in Apple and committing to develop software like Office for the Mac, the audience actually booed him. But the irony is, Microsoft's software support probably helped Apple survive a really difficult period. Strange bedfellows sometimes.
Gates' leadership style back then is often described as, well, intense, demanding, reviewing code himself, constant arguments.
Yeah, he pushed incredibly hard. He believed strongly in debating ideas fiercely, no matter who you were. It definitely created a culture of urgency and speed, which was vital then. But he's acknowledged himself it wasn't always the most empathetic approach. Today's tech world often values a different style, but it showed his absolute focus on the product.
And that relentless drive eventually led to conflict, particularly the antitrust case with the U.S. government over bundling Internet Explorer with Windows. That was a huge deal.
It was massive. Gates initially felt they were just improving the product, adding value for users. Why wouldn't you include a browser? But the whole process, the trial, the public scrutiny, it forced a real reckoning with the responsibilities of having that much market power. It was humbling, he said, and really raised that fundamental question for the whole industry. How do you balance innovation with fair competition? It had long-lasting effects.
So back to that luck versus skill idea. Seems like his take is you need both. You need the skill to be ready when luck or timing presents an opportunity.
Precisely. Being prepared to seize the moment.
And his proudest decision, still that DOS licensing deal. Biggest regret. Missing mobile, underestimating smartphones.
Yeah, quite candid about that.
And the word he used to describe Microsoft's rise.
Relentless. Seems fitting. Okay, let's shift gears. Beyond Microsoft, beyond the empire building, there's this major evolution in Gates' life. He said money wasn't the main goal, just a result, which led him to think about responsibility. Exactly. That sense of responsibility, that question of what do you do with this scale of resources, was the seed for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It wasn't just about charity. It was a moral obligation he felt to use his wealth and, importantly, his way of thinking to tackle the world's biggest problems: poverty, disease, education.
And it's fascinating how he applied that tech mindset, isn't it? Taking the approach from coding software to coding solutions for global health.
Absolutely. The same rigor. Identify the problem, research potential solutions, find scalable interventions, measure the results obsessively, iterate, improve. It's a very analytical, data-driven approach to philanthropy.
Like their focus on vaccines. Why did vaccines become such a cornerstone? He saw them as high leverage.
Incredibly high leverage. Vaccines are one of the most cost-effective health interventions ever created. For a relatively small cost per person, you prevent devastating diseases, save millions of lives, and give children the chance to actually grow up healthy and reach their potential. It fits that analytical model perfectly. Maximum impact for the resources invested. And it ties into his belief that birth shouldn't determine destiny. Providing basic health gives people a fair shot.
Stepping away from Microsoft couldn't have been easy, though, his whole life's work.
He admits it was harder than he expected. Microsoft was, his first child, but he felt it was necessary, both for Microsoft to get new leadership under Steve Ballmer and for him to dedicate his energy fully to the Foundation's mission.
People talk about this shift from ruthless businessman to humanitarian, but you're saying the core mindset didn't really change?
I think that's his perspective. The problems changed from software bugs to malaria, but the approach to solving them remained remarkably consistent. It was always about analysis, scale, finding solutions, measuring impact, just applied to a different domain.
The foundation definitely faced its share of skepticism, like any huge global effort. His response was pretty direct, though.
Yeah. Judge us by the results. Let the data speak for itself. Are lives being saved? Is health improving? That's the metric.
And the giving pledge, committing to give away most of his wealth, heavily influenced by Warren Buffett. That's a powerful statement about what wealth is for.
It really is. It reframes immense wealth, not just as a personal asset, but as a tool, a resource that carries a responsibility. The idea that beyond a certain point, money doesn't add much personal happiness, so its highest utility is tackling societal problems. It's had a huge influence on philanthropy globally.
He's also reflected on personal regrets, like maybe not balancing work and life better earlier on.
Yes, acknowledging the toll that intense focus took on relationships and perhaps his own well-being back then.
His advice to a younger Bill Gates is quite telling. Work hard, sure, but look around. Life isn't just code. Relationships matter. Empathy matters.
A lesson learned over time, perhaps.
And how does he want his legacy remembered?
Simply as someone who tried to make the world better, whether it was through software that empowered people or philanthropy that saved lives. It's about the impact.
And he still clearly believes one idea can change the world, whether it's AI, clean energy, medicine.
Absolutely. He sees the opportunities for innovation today as being just as big, if not bigger, than when he started.
So let's look ahead then. His vision for the future. He's particularly focused on AI and clean energy. What's his take on AI, the potential and the pitfalls?
He sees AI as profoundly transformative, maybe on the scale of the PC or the internet. Huge potential to boost human capability. Think medical research, personalized education, making businesses way more efficient. But he's not naive about the risks. Job displacement is real, privacy concerns are huge, algorithmic bias is a danger, and then there's the potential for misuse. So his big thing is we need responsible development. We need guardrails. We need to ensure the benefits are shared broadly, not just by a few. He sees parallels to the early PC days. People don't fully grasp the scale of change yet.
And then there's climate change. This seems deeply personal for him.
It really does. He emphasizes how it hits the world's poorest the hardest, the very people his foundation tries to help. So he sees tackling climate as inseparable from global development. He stresses the need for rapid innovation across the board. Clean energy, yes, but also agriculture, manufacturing, transport. Everything needs rethinking.
But his angle is interesting. It's less about just sacrifice and more about innovation.
Exactly. He's a technologist at heart. He believes that while lifestyle changes help, the real solution lies in inventing and scaling up new, clean technologies. Things like zero-carbon cement, green hydrogen, next-generation nuclear power. He often says, technology got us into this mess. Technology can get us out. It's an optimistic but also challenging view.
He talks about the next Microsoft moment potentially being in climate tech, building huge, impactful companies that also decarbonize the economy.
Yeah, he definitely sees massive opportunity there for entrepreneurs who want to build something big and solve a critical global problem.
So for young innovators listening, maybe inspired by this, what's his core advice?
He usually boils it down to three things. 1, pick problems that matter. Don't just chase the easy money, chase real impact. 2, learn relentlessly. Just be endlessly curious, always learning, like being a student for life. And 3, collaborate. Big problems are too complex for any one person or company. You have to work together.
That makes sense. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the size of global challenges, though.
For sure. But his advice there is usually to start small. Find a piece of the problem you can work on. Because small steps, when lots of people take them, they really compound. One idea, one project can grow into something huge.
Which brings us back full circle, really, that core theme. One idea, if you nurture it with passion, with persistence, it really can change everything. We saw it with the PC. We might see it with AI or clean energy or something else entirely.
The potential is always there.
And looking back, Gates seems less about satisfaction, more about purpose. Still driven, still working on cures, emissions, education.
Yeah, a sense of ongoing purpose. Grateful for the journey, but still focused on the work ahead.
Well, that's quite a journey we've unpacked today. From that single revolutionary idea about personal computing, through the absolutely relentless growth of Microsoft, the huge pivot to global philanthropy, and now this focus on future challenges like AI and climate.
It really covers so much ground. And for you listening, hopefully some key things stand out. You know, the power of having that clear vision, the importance of those sharp strategic calls like licensing DOS, the need for just relentless execution, but also learning from mistakes like missing mobile and maybe most profoundly. The impact you can have when you apply your skills and resources to the world's biggest problems, it really redefines what success can look like.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. One idea, if you pursue it with real passion and grit, it can change everything. It happened with Microsoft. It could happen again, maybe even with you. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.